Hello to everyone and welcome to the RANsquawk weekly wrap. So just going to take a look at what's happened this week and today, the key points, and then going to take a look at next week and the main events to look out for. Just taking a look at Europe, and the main points to take away from this week have been those talks on boosting the IMF resources. So at the moment that currently sits at $377 billion. Worth remembering, back in December we saw Eurozone countries commit around $150 billion towards those IMF funds, with Germany the main contributor there at 41.5. So this week we've seen Japan commit a further $60 billion. The US is still reluctant to commit more. They're the main shareholder in the IMF, so that's one sticking point. Another sticking point being contributions from emerging nations. This because they want greater voting rights within the IMF. This has not been granted and those reforms have not been made yet. Another slight surprise was seeing the UK today announce they're committing £10 billion worth to the IMF. This number, not surprising. Just surprising the timing of it, considering that in the past they've said they won't commit until China commit. This more likely nearer the next meeting of G20 finance ministers, which takes place in June. Similarly, emerging nations more likely to commit around this time as well. Now, whilst we're talking about Europe, again, importantly, it's worth noting that it is the first round of the French presidential elections on Sunday of this week, so the 22nd of April. So the two frontrunners in that are the current President Sarkozy and also François Hollande. So he's currently leading in the polls with 29%. Sarkozy lagging slightly at 25.5%. Now, in terms of market impact on the back of these results, it could be fairly limited. However, we could see some volatility in the spread, so the French 10-year against the German benchmark, and that's due to the changes that Hollande has proposed in his manifesto. However, it will be quite interesting to see the reaction, if there is one at all. It might be more likely we'll see a reaction after the second round of elections, which take place on May the 6th, at the same time as those Greek elections. But in terms of Europe, they're the main points. Now let's just take a look at next week and the key events going forward. So just taking a look at next week, and it will be very US heavy next week. So we've got Apple reporting, the FOMC rate decision and Bernanke press conference, and we've also got US GDP on Friday. So for this GDP reading, the previous was at 3%. This time analysts expecting around 2.5%. So it'll be interesting to see that, especially after the recent employment numbers we've had, which have disappointed slightly. So again, I expect at 2.5%. Now, taking a look at the FOMC rate decision, unsurprisingly, all our analyst surveys expecting no change in the rate there. However, the main points to take away will be the Bernanke statement and his press conference later on in the evening. So any sort of talk on further accommodation, any sort of QE on the table, anything like that could cause quite an exaggerated move within the markets. Again, however, many analysts not expecting a massive change, considering where inflation is at the moment and also those GDP readings. But interesting to see any projections from Fed members. We're expecting that for this time round, but that'll be the main point of focus in the middle of the week. Now, in terms of corporate earnings season, it is still very much underway. We'll be very busy next week, especially on Wednesday and Thursday. But on Tuesday, it's worth noting that Apple will be reporting. That'll be the main point of focus after market. So their EPS currently expected at 9.95, with their revenues expected at around 36 to 37 billion. Any sort of miss or massive beat, again, could cause quite exaggerated moves within the markets, especially going ahead to Wednesday, the day after. But in terms of the main points to take away, they're the main events. And in the meantime, I hope you have a very pleasant weekend, and we'll join you back bright and early on Monday morning. But for the time being, thanks.